We're going to turn the webinar over to them in just a moment. But first, we're just going to give a brief introduction to the webinar and to the people who are co-hosting it. It's being co-hosted by Justice Ministries and Canadian Ministries at the Presbyterian Church in Canada. And we have Kara Earhart, who is the Justice Ministries Program Assistant. Can't see her, but she's waving. And Emily Hill, who's the Education Program Coordinator at Canadian Ministries. She's also waving.
Hello.
And then myself, Allison Carr, who's the Justice Ministries Program Coordinator. So we decided to co-host this webinar, recognizing the importance of caring for the environment as part of Christian discipleship and witness. And we chose to do so recognizing that God chose to become embodied and walk the earth, that right now some of the actions that humans are doing are harming. So thinking back on some of the scriptures in Genesis and in Job, where we hear God giving a speech about the beauty of creation and about all of the different aspects of creation, where you hear God talk about even blades of grass that have never been touched by humans, and the raven's hungry young, and things of these nature. You come to understand that God knows the earth and really cares about creation. And so we know that this earth is very dear to God. So if you're interested in more resources concerning living out Christian witness and caring for the environment, Justice Ministries has produced a resource just recently on that talks about Earth Day and Easter, since they fall only a day apart this year. And that will be available soon on the website and has some study guides and things of that nature on it. Now, we recently sent out a letter to all the presbyteries asking what individual congregations are doing for the environment, and the response was really encouraging. So many Presbyterian churches are working to care for and safeguard creation, and today you're going to hear some of those ideas that others have already implemented. So with that, I'm going to turn the webinar over to Greg, and we'll get started.
Oops, great. Thank you very much. Do you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I think you can hear me now. It's okay, yeah? Yes. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you very much for welcoming us today. I'm really excited to talk to all of you about the Green Churches Network. Before I really get started and talk about the network, I'll introduce myself as well. So my name is Gregory Lynch, and I've been the director here at the Green Churches Network for about 6 months now, so it's still pretty new to me. I come from the environmental field, so I've worked in nonprofit organizations for about 10 years on environmental questions, and a lot in community action and interaction. I thought bringing different groups together. And I also run a small business doing training and education related to the environment. So in this new position as the director of the Green Churches Network, I'm excited to take the reins of the organization after Normand Lavec, who started the organization, and kind of take it on to the next step as to where we can go and where we can expand to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just share with you a small presentation and walk you through a little bit of the history of the Green Churches Network, as well as where we're hoping to go, and quite honestly, perhaps where we can have some collaboration down the road as well. I'm just going to make sure everyone can see the presentation here now. It's properly shared. Silence I'm going to take as a yes.
Yes, it was properly shared. There we go. Yeah, now it is.
Okay, great. So basically what I'll do today is I'm going to talk about, as I said, the history of the Green Churches Network, our goals, and where the network stands at this point in time. From there, I'm going to also chat a little bit about the Green Churches Forum. So every 2 years, we generally have one big event where we can bring together all different churches that are focused on environmental action. And we share our successes, we share our challenges, as well as a bunch of resources. And those resources are spiritual, they're also action-oriented, and education community-oriented. So we have quite the list of possibilities and quite a lot of chat to have as well at the forum. But I'll get into that in a little bit of detail later on. So first off, the Green Churches Network was started here in Montreal. So it's a Montreal-based organization, and it was originally just a program in 2006 at La Maison Saint-Colombe, which hired a single student to run a small program called the Green Churches. From there, a year out, there was a lot of interest, and it grew into something a little bit more. It turned into a committee, actually. And the Green Churches program at that point became something that was looking a little bit long-term rather than just looking at a one-year program. And finally, in 2008, it became a multi-church organization. So it escaped out of where it was, maybe not escaped, but it developed even further to involve 4 different communities that were focused on environmental action in Montreal. And each of those activities happened at 4 different locations as well. So it was churches coming together and church communities coming together to really focus on what we can do as a group, because individually we maybe don't have that much impact as one person or even as one community, but we as a Christian community across Canada can actually have an impact enormously on the environmental issues that we're facing today. And out of that kind of inspiration, finally, Normand Levesque, who is my predecessor, he became the first Catholic coordinator in 2009. And I highlight the fact that he was Catholic because up until this point, the Green Churches Network was only within the United Church. There was some links with the Catholic Church, but it was in 2009 that became a program within the Ecumenical Society, and the mandate to be as ecumenical as possible really became at the heart of the organization. So it's interesting that right now we actually have a strong representation of Catholic communities and churches, but our goal really is to have the most diversity possible within the network. So since 2009, Normand was the director of the organization and also took it from being a program within the Ecumenical Society into being an independent nonprofit organization in 2015. And since 2015, the organization has been growing a lot and has been expanding what we can offer to the churches around us, both again on the spiritual side as well as on the action and educational side of things. So as an organization, where we're focused is, at this point in time, we're working on a 3-year plan, and we tend to work on 3-year plans in general. So this plan is from 2018 and will be finishing in 2021. So actually at the end of 2020. So we're about halfway through, and about a year from now, we'll be building our next plan out for the following 3 years. Our plan does focus on 5 major themes right now. But before I really get into them, you'll see at the bottom of the screen I have our mandate. I'm going to read it aloud even though you can see it. But so our goal is to help Christian communities in Canada care for God's creation. From the energy efficiency of religious buildings to the prayers and the liturgy, through environmental campaigns, the green team in your community can gradually make environmental stewardship a reality. So again, our goal is to be a joining point for many different church organizations to share resources and to move forward together. Each one of these 5 themes then is where we're really focusing on our 3-year plan right now, and I'll go a little bit more into detail for each one of them. So for youth, it's something that, regardless of the denomination, a lot of our church communities are really struggling to keep youth involved or to attract more youth and even young families into the churches. Being really focused on creation care and the environmental movement is another way that we can encourage youth to be engaged with society and their common problems that we're all trying to deal with environmentally, but also with the church community, and demonstrating that church communities are focused on the same priorities as youth are right now. And we really see this link coming out, particularly now with the march just last week on climate change, and the fact that as youth move forward and are taking more political power, they're looking for places where they can volunteer, where they can really get implicated with the questions of environmentalism. And I really believe strongly that the church can be that place. The second theme is society. And here it's an interesting one in that the church, as the church is, but I'm going to say the church in general, are struggling a little bit with our image on a larger societal, or in a larger societal arena, in that particularly the Catholic Church is struggling with the way that the church is perceived. And here in Quebec, it particularly has a negative image. And we think that changing the church to be addressing major issues like climate change and other environmental issues will help our image to be improved as well. And again, help us to engage better with modern society and the people that have been a little hesitant to be engaged with churches. Personally, I again come from a nonprofit background, and this is my first post back in relationship with churches. And in my entourage as well, people are very hesitant, but the more that I can talk about it and talk about the positive steps that the church is taking on environmental things, it improves a little bit the reputation of churches in general as well. The third one here is religious heritage. And religious heritage is basically, we're talking about our buildings, our land, and the many, many different resources that various churches own and maintain across the country. And quite honestly, it's something that we struggle with. It's expensive to maintain church buildings, and unfortunately, the money just isn't there to make it happen in a lot of cases as well. However, when we're looking at religious heritage, getting those upgrades, making sure those buildings are well maintained, and making sure that our grounds are well maintained, go hand in hand with environmental action as well. This would include looking at buildings and making sure that their energy efficiency is really top notch, as well as maintaining the buildings as far as cleaning and renovations done in an eco-friendly environmental way. If churches can do that and people can see that it can be done easily and quite honestly cheaper than with a lot of other products, we're hoping that a lot of those practices can then be taken home. So those people that are coming to the church every day and see that the church is taking these small steps in their everyday choices can also affect the families. The environment. We are so many people that are involved with our church communities, and we spend a lot of time here. And if we can make small changes in the way that we run our churches, we can actually have a massive impact on our environmental footprint. Our buildings, as I said, consume a lot of energy. In reducing our energy consumption, we can improve our emissions. Same thing for maintenance of the church, as I was saying before. When we're reducing our consumption of harmful products, on a large scale, if we look across Canada, and that really is what our goal is as the Green Churches Network, is to look Canada-wide. If we just stop buying pesticides, herbicides, and other harmful products, we can actually really reduce the consumption across the country. And finally, the church. We really believe, obviously, we are a faith community, and having a faith community that focuses on environmental issues can also help the church to grow in its spirituality. We are called to care for creation, and in fulfilling this call, we can also deepen our faith and become more engaged with our church community as well as the larger community. So it's a little bit of a sense of where our 5 goals are, and I know that it's a lot to take in, but we do have broad goals, and we're trying to make sure that we're providing resources for each one of our churches in the network to participate. So I'm going to, as I mentioned, the network, I'm going to move forward a little bit and talk about what we do for our network. So this is just a screenshot of our website. And basically on our website, that's where we share most of our tools. And our tools basically fall into 3 categories: spirituality, education, and action. So throughout our network, people are taking these resources, adapting them, using as best they can, and then sharing them with their broader communities as well. In the spirituality side of things, we have a host of prayers, of readings, as well as liturgies that are available for download, and they're free for use, not necessarily just for our network members, but really for everyone. There's nothing to block it. We want that information to be out and free to everybody. Educational activities are the kinds of things, again, that are downloadable, that people can do outside of services. So if we're looking to engage with youth or even just with a larger community, we can offer a lot of these educational activities for free to anybody that wants to use them to try to, again, improve our knowledge of what the environmental issues are. And finally, action. These are really fun action-oriented activities that are available to everybody. They come with a little list of materials as well as to how to organize them. And each of these action activities can be done usually between 1 and 3 hours. So it's a pretty small commitment, but it gets people really thinking and doing something in their community. A lot of them are related to education as well, something like bird identification or planting pollinator gardens, these kind of things at the churches. But there's also a whole other side of things that are focused on maintenance and upgrades within the churches and on actual infrastructure. So the action side has a bit of depth as well to it there, which is really nice as far as big actions that we can take in our communities. Actually, I use the word depth, but there's depth in all three of them, certainly. But the action one is something that often we see small actions, but there's potential for big actions there as well. So who is our network? As you can see on this slide here and on our little map, our network is really heavily concentrated within Quebec. And it's something that we're very cognizant of the fact that we want to be a pan-Canadian organization. We're based out of Montreal and we're slowly expanding out. So as you can see, most of our communities are along the St. Lawrence River going from Montreal up to Quebec. But we have now growing communities in Ottawa, a couple down in Toronto and in southwestern Ontario, as well as one out, actually two now in Nouvelle-Écosse, in Nova Scotia. And we're getting a couple more out in New Brunswick. We also have a couple of churches out in the West Coast, so both in Alberta and in BC. So this also, I want to give you a little bit of a more idea as to who our churches are. We have a great number of churches that are Catholic right now. So more than half of the churches in our network are Catholic. We also have a large representation from United Church, and we have a growing community in the Baptist Church. That being said, we don't have a lot of Presbyterian churches involved, and we don't have a lot of Anglican churches involved. So there are two directions that we'd really like to expand out. The other thing is that the churches that are involved right now are about 80% Francophone. It's one of those things that being based in Quebec, we had originally built up a lot of our resources in French and had reached out first to the Francophone community. But if we want to be pan-Canadian, we've really put forth a massive effort to translate everything that we've got. So all of our resources are now available in both languages. And we're really trying to reach out to the Anglophone community in Quebec and across Canada. Quite honestly, there's a lot of growth happening right now. This month alone, like every week, we've had a new church come on board, and every one of those churches has been from outside of Quebec. So we're really happy with that growth happening. And I think that expanding outside of Quebec will be really important to have the impact that we want as well on those 5 thematic areas that I mentioned earlier. So now with an understanding of who we are, what we do, and what our goals are, I'm going to tell you a little bit about our semi-annual event that we do, which is called the Green Churches Forum. Before I do, actually have a little thing. Basically, when churches join our organization, it's a pretty straightforward process. The first thing is just to make sure that there's a green team in your church, and if there isn't one already, to actually build that green team up. If that green team or committee, you can call it whatever you want, is then ready to go, we just need a short article from your team explaining what your goals are, what kind of actions you're doing, what you're hoping to do as well, and we have a registration form. To be a green church, it costs $100 a year, and basically what that gets you is access to everything that's free on our website as well, but we also have books and other resources as well as kits that we sell on the website, and any member gets then a discount. I actually don't remember if it's 10 or 15% off of all of our products. The other thing is we'll keep you up to date on other events that are going on, other churches that are part of your network, and we really put forth an effort in trying to work with church organizations that want to have an impact. We spend a lot of time here at the office talking to those organizations so that we can work all together. So your $100 goes a long way in supporting us also in bringing your individual initiatives at your local level to something that's a little bit broader and looking at a Canadian level of impact for the churches. So we try to be a voice for our entire network, and the small fee of $100 a year helps us to be able to do that. It helps us enormously, actually. And finally, the other thing is when you're a member of the Green Churches Network, coming out to the forum, which is where I'm going to go right now, there's also a reduction in price for that. and also gives you access to a lot of those kind of training opportunities. We do a lot of events and workshops in our churches that are here locally, and we're happy to come to churches to do those kind of trainings, workshops, and conferences in any style that you prefer as well. So let's talk a little bit about the Green Churches Forum. So the Green Churches Forum is an event, as I said, that brings together different Green Churches communities that want to share their experiences, that want to learn a little bit more, and also want to celebrate their faith together in an ecumenical kind of setting. And so our first Green Churches Forum was at St. Charles Church in Montreal, and that was in 2010. So we're now looking 9 years ago, and there were already 150 people that came out to it. So it was a great turnout. It was a day-long event, and we had some really great speakers from politicians to church leaders, as well as involved church members. In 2012, we held the second Green Churches Forum, which was in Saint-Nicéphore in Drummondville, Quebec. So you can see we had 2 times in Quebec in a row there. And this one was, again, focused more on the community itself of Drummondville, things that were happening there, and what was happening across Quebec. Again, we had about 100 and some odd people that came out to that event as well. Another good success, and it demonstrated the appetite that people really have for an event to come together and discuss these things, because so often in our church communities, we feel like we're acting alone, and particularly with environmental issues, it's again a smaller section of our church communities, and having a chance to get together and to chat is really, really fantastic and really important. As I go along, by the way, if anyone has questions, feel free to stop me. I'm looking at my slides, but if you text in or if you just yell a question out, I'm happy to pause as well. Finally, the third forum was held in 2015 in Quebec City. So the goal there was to have something that would have a little bit more visibility on the political level, as well as a lot of church organizations have their central locations in Quebec City or in Montreal. But in this case, it was really theological. So the third forum was held in Quebec City, again, over 1 day, and it was really focused on the theology and the spiritual side of creation care, which was, again, a good success. And we brought in a lot of leaders in church communities to be discussing in that point. And finally, our most recent forum was in 2017, and this one was held in Ottawa. It was the first one that we really wanted to get out of Quebec, and as I said, our goal right now is to get out of our Francophone Quebecois focus and really get into the larger Anglophone Canadian community as well. And so moving out to Ottawa allowed us to hold a bilingual event, and also to celebrate Canada's 150th anniversary at the same time. So we had support from the Canadian government as well as the Quebecois government, and bringing those two communities together, it was a really strong step for us to be breaking out into the Anglophone community. So that's kind of where the forum has been, and it gives you a sense as well how we've developed. This most recent forum was really focused on community action and education. And so let me tell you a little bit about our goals for the upcoming forum, which will be this year in Trois-Rivières, which is a small city about an hour and a half from Montreal. It's located right in the center of Quebec, so it's very accessible for Ontario communities as well as New Brunswick communities and throughout Quebec. It's once again going to be bilingual, but first let me tell you a little bit about our goals. So our theme for this year is going to be water. There's many different reasons that we've come onto it, but water is an important symbol in our faith, but it's also an important issue to be dealing with environmentally. This year is the International Year of Water. It's also the International Decade of Water right now. And we just celebrated World Water Day last week. So we're really pushing the theme of water and the symbolism of water, which is also one of the reasons that we chose Trois-Rivières as our host city. Trois-Rivières means 3 rivers, and it is a city that's on the joining of 3 rivers coming together, including the St. Lawrence River. So for this forum, we have 4 basic goals again. First is celebration. Again, when talking about environmental issues, and often when talking about the church as well, We worry about what the future looks like. We worry about the issues that we need to address. But in this case, we want to be together to celebrate the hard work that we've been putting into this, as well as celebrating our faith together. We so often don't get a chance to celebrate in an ecumenical way, and this is going to be a great time to bring people together of different denominations to celebrate our faith and celebrate our actions toward creation care. We also then have coming together. Now, I've chosen this wording just because I want to focus on the fact that, yes, we have a shared faith, but we also have a shared community. And one of the biggest things for the Green Churches Network is building that community. So coming together is really focused on the fact that we'll be sharing space. This forum is going to be over 2 days rather than 1. Sharing meals, and as we can all say, particularly in our faith, there's a lot of symbolism there as well. But sharing food, sharing community, and sharing space is really important for us. And so this is going to be a moment for everyone involved in the eco-spiritual movement to come together and to share amongst each other. And that word brings me to my third theme, which is sharing. So not just sharing our experiences, but sharing our knowledge, sharing our failures, and sharing our goals, and sharing resources. And so the Green Churches Network will, yes, be bringing in conference speakers as well as workshop facilitators, and we'll have a lot of different activities. But in this case as well, one of the big things is we want to really focus on the community side of things. So we're really hoping to have a lot of different panels as well, where people from different members of Green teams across Canada can then be in front of other communities. We can ask questions, we can discuss possible solutions, and how we can then collaborate to reach the goals that we have together. And so this sharing is going in all directions. We really are trying to step away from one person in front of a large audience and speaking to them about what they should do, and look at something a little bit more collaborative as to deciding how we can all work together to have a shared experience, but also to share resources. And finally, it'll be a learning experience. For every one of us, throughout those 2 days, there's going to be a host of activities, and we'll be able to learn a great deal about our faith, about the environment, and about what the actions are that we can take in our own lives, but also on a larger scale to address those environmental issues. So those are a little bit of our goals. And finally, I'll just tell you a little bit about what the actual forum will look like. So the forum will be held on the 19th and 20th of October. So it's this fall, and it's over a weekend. Normally, we've done this on Saturdays, and we had a lot of debate as to whether we wanted to do it the Friday, Saturday, so that any church leaders can come. And we decided to rather do it the Saturday, Sunday. It gives us a chance to also have a service the Sunday morning, an ecumenical service that everyone can attend. Unfortunately, it means that we will lose some church leaders on the Sunday morning, but our goal is then to bring in more families. So we can have all of our church leaders come out on the Saturday, but and have families come out, because a lot of people can't get a Friday off, that's for sure. And we're going to make sure that we have activities for kids as well as for adults and for community members. As I mentioned, the theme for this year is going to be the gift of water. I chose one of my own personal favorite quotes, which is, "Whoever drinks of the water that I will give him will never be thirsty again. The water that I will give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life." So this is a quote from an episode where Jesus is sitting at a well and discussing with a woman who comes to draw out water. And I love the symbolism of this particular story, and the conversation that goes back and forth between a very symbolic representation of water and talking about real physical thirst as well. And of course, the symbolism of water is going to be a major exploration for this year's forum. Of course, the event is going to be bilingual, so it means that there will be presenters in both languages, but also any presenter in a language that you don't understand will also be translated where need be. And as I mentioned, we'll have workshops, speakers, and panel discussions. And those panel discussions, I think, will be really one of the most interesting aspects of the forum, where people can really have a lot of exchange. And finally, there'll be a little bit of entertainment as well. The Saturday night, there's going to be a big community dinner, and there'll be some entertainment from local community members in Trois-Rivières, who will be able to provide something a little bit special, focused on the theme as well of water as well. which will hopefully be coming from a large youth community that's going to be working with us to organize the forum. So if I bring it back to that, that's basically what I want to talk about, is give you an introduction to the Green Churches Network. I'd love to have you guys all check out our website as well. That's where you'll find lots and lots of resources. And of course, we're always here to answer any questions that you might have as well. So I think I'm going to, pass it back to you guys now. And we can see where we can go from here.
All right, well, thank you very much for that presentation. And we are just going to very briefly switch over to Elizabeth, Elizabeth Churcher, who will be presenting her work now.
Are you sharing?
We can't hear Elizabeth. Oh, Elizabeth, you want to unmute your mic?
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Is that it?
There's the slideshow.
Okay, ready to go? Hi, I'm Elizabeth Churcher. Welcome to St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church in Tweed, a small town situated in rural eastern Ontario. Next.
I think you started before that. Oh, there you go.
Okay. Our greening journey began very simply in 2015 with a single comment about the occasional use of paper plates at church functions. Having a very strong commitment to the environment myself, and knowing that the gentleman expressing concern has a deep respect for God's creation, I suggested to him that I would be pleased to share the issue at our next session meeting. The response from session was very positive. Everyone demonstrated a lot of interest and advised me to ask a few people in the congregation to come together as a team to explore what the St. Andrews community could do to respect, protect, and remediate the environment. Next. The team began meeting monthly, brainstorming ideas of what actions could be taken, fill the agendas of our initial gatherings, taking ample time to discuss each of our understandings, to expose our individual biases, and to find common ground was instrumental in to building a strong foundation for the work that was to come. The openness and trust that is required to sustain a group was established. Next, please. We soon realized that we needed to organize our discussions and share them with others in a written format. The concept of an environmental ethics and practices booklet was born. Many of our conversations had focused on the current state of the cosmos, so we began our booklet with Bible verses and statements from living faith, which explain the beginning of environmental degradation and point to our role in it. Next, please. Then we incorporated some statements from scientific research, which served to paint a picture of the current state of the cosmos. Right across our planet, climate change is affecting, either directly or indirectly, the supply of food. We need to take food insecurity seriously, even though we personally have plenty. Next, please. One of the effects of climate change is extreme weather. In the village of Tweed, we have experienced flooding. Water damage and water quality are concerns. We must do our part by reducing our environmental footprint and by helping those who are impacted negatively by flooding and other natural disasters. Next, please. The next step was the development of vision and mission statements. Our vision. The St. Andrew's Church community believes that we should demonstrate our responsibility to be faithful servants of the Lord and His creation. Our mission, what we must do, the St. Andrew's Church community is committed to loving creation and humanity by performing actions that respect, protect, and remediate the environment. Next, please. The final segment of our booklet outlined actions which the St. Andrew's community, as well as the community of Tweed, could pursue. Many themes were included: gardening, reduce, reuse, recycle, repair, conservation of energy and water, transportation, monetary investments, and many more. Next, please. Upon completion, the Environmental Ethics and Practices booklet was distributed by the environmental team at an Earth Day service that our team had organized and conducted. Next, please. After people had had an opportunity to review the booklet, we began putting environmental tidbits in the church bulletin every week. The short statements are conservation suggestions, interesting environmental information from research, or quotes pertaining to nature. When implementing any new initiative, it is important to review the information regularly in innovative ways. Next, please. Almost immediately, we began to see results. Many practices were refined and expanded, and new strategies were introduced. Paper plates vanished, and plastic tablecloths were replaced with long-lasting material. There was an increased number of conversations about our recycling program. People were paying more attention to the recycling labels on items. One of our circle of friends arrived at church with a gift for use in the church kitchen, a stainless steel composting bucket. Next, please. We made a display board out of recycled materials on which we place notices of upcoming special events that we organize. After the event, we post pictures for all to enjoy, as well as maintaining pictorial and written records of our activities in albums. Next, please. Our team has planned many events to learn and worship. For example, we have visited a pioneer homestead and an Amish community and have interacted with our Indigenous neighbors. Our worship walks have taken us out into God's beautiful garden to learn more about God's handiwork. As we look more closely, we are able to grasp a deeper understanding and appreciation of God's wisdom and power. Our exploration is typically followed by conversation, discussion about God's gifts to us, and prayers of thanksgiving. Next, please. God's creation is for all. We organize short, manageable walks, which are accessible to everyone. Pets are always welcome too. Next, please. Collaborating with, when we venture out along more challenging paths, we provide options so that everyone can participate. An afternoon of singing in a home that is situated among the trees is a great alternative. Music is loved by everyone. Our event culminates in everyone joining together for fellowship and celebration. Next, please. Collaborating with our community is an important part of our mission. Many St. Andrew's friends join in the Trash Bash, which is organized by our municipality and Kiwanis Club as part of Tweed's Earth Day activities. Next, please. We also have reached out to our community by developing gardens that will provide food for both the people in our community and for pollinators. Next, please. Last spring, we turned the sod, enriched the soil, planted seeds and small perennial plants, watered the garden, and we watched it grow. Next, please. We planted a pollinator garden around our little lending library that had been dedicated at the end of our Earth Day service. We were blessed with blossoms that attracted many tourists and folks from our community who enjoyed strolling about, absorbing the peacefulness and beauty of the gardens. We had opportunities to chat with many of them. Next, please. Gardens that offered food for many species of living creatures were very popular. Both annual and perennial pollinator plants attracted bees and butterflies. The sunflowers were a favorite food source for goldfinches. The small vegetable garden, which supplied an abundance of tomatoes and beans, was well used by folks. The popularity of the garden and our awareness of many needing food in our community led us to develop plans for expansion. We applied for a grant that could be used to build raised beds in which we could grow a variety of vegetables. God has blessed us with positive results, so we are presently refining the details of a much larger garden project that will be implemented this spring. Next, please. While we are very busy dealing with ongoing projects, it is important to be open to new ideas. One of our St. Andrew's friends suggested that we organize a textile drive. We know that we don't have time to get involved in another project at present, but we are investigating the possibility of pursuing this initiative in the future. If it is to happen, God will show us the way. Next, please. On our greening journey in the woodlands and at our church, our St. Andrew's community of friends is striving to respect God's creation and seek its responsible use for the common good. Next, please. We continue our journey, always open to the unexpected and having faith that God will lead us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, and we've now come to the end of the two presentations, and so we have some time for questions. And we're just looking at some of the questions that have that can be raised here. And one of the first ones that comes up is, if I can address it to you first, Elizabeth, and then to Gregory, was what are some of the challenges that you've seen in trying to put together a program for helping the environment in your locale?
Challenges? Well, I think we are in a rural community. Our church does not have a huge number of members, and so we have certainly a lot more ideas than we have people, so we have to be careful not to oversubscribe. But we have a very faithful crew, and I find that the enthusiasm is growing. I think enthusiasm just spreads, and more people out in the community are hearing about our initiatives and asking about them, and I think it's going to become a much larger community initiative if we just keep the faith and follow God. we haven't had a lot of major obstacles within the church. We try to be open with our membership and collect input from everyone so that if there are concerns, we go ahead and deal with them and try to include everyone. That there will always be you know, some people who voice differing opinions, but it's important to listen and to deal with those differing opinions.
All right, thank you very much. Gregory, you?
That was great. I feel like throughout our network, we see a lot of that same kind of problem as well. The other thing that we see often is habits are really hard to change. And particularly in the church, we have a long history of having the same habits, particularly for a lot of the events that we hold, and trying to, like the very first example that Elizabeth made, making sure that we're not using disposable plates and those kind of things in churches is a habit that's hard to change because it's a lot of work that then comes back onto the communities that are often organizing. The other thing that we find is making sure that these projects are long-term. Often there's one very passionate person or two very passionate people that try to drive these projects forward. And if they aren't able to maintain it for whatever reason that might be, often the projects then kind of fall aside. So trying to build a network is also part of the reason that we want to make sure that we have a little bit of resilience within our communities to make sure that those projects can keep rolling regardless of who's the person heading them up.
All right, wonderful. We've just had another question come in, and that it's directed at you, Greg. It says, what are some of the most innovative ways that members of the Green Churches Network are demonstrating care for creation in their communities?
It's an interesting question. I like the choice of words. Innovation is an interesting one for churches and for the environmental movement. I unfortunately have a personal bias in that I really love insects, and I particularly like pollinators. And pollinator gardens, I think, is one of the most innovative choices of an activity because it becomes really like a kiosk for the community onto what's going on in our internal communities. So very nice job, by the way. But it's something that's beautiful, easy to interact with, and it is an educational experience that you're learning without knowing that you're learning. I think it's one of the greatest things that we can do. And from there, of course, I also have another side of things, which is infrastructure projects. So looking at infrastructure to deal with energy use and energy efficiency is another direction a lot of churches are going.
All right,
I'm a beekeeper myself as well. That's why I love the bees a lot as well.
Of course, I am also a fan of bees. Wait, so we just had a second question come in. This one is for Elizabeth. And that one is, how is food from the community garden shared? And how does the church engage the community with the garden?
Actually, last summer, we didn't have huge gardens, so we had a manageable amount of food, and our team just advertised because we have a lot of seniors in our church, and I often bring food from my own gardens and put it out in the church basement. But we just advertised for people to pick what they wanted, and then the team monitored and picked any excess. And it was just absolutely amazing. People would pass by on the street when we were picking, and we would just start chatting with them and offer them the food. And so that worked very well. We do have a food bank in town, and we have already been informed by our member of parliament that that food bank will be in greater need. So there are lots of options. We have a community health center in town, and they have a community garden initiative as well. So we're working in collaboration with them. We know that food insecurity is a very big concern in this community, and we know that there are many families who can benefit from the food, And last year, for example, in my own personal gardens, I was just given the names of some people, and I just filtered them, the excess from my community gardens. So there are lots of options. We're just exploring the most efficient way to manage the food, because we're hoping to have a lot more this summer than we did last year.
If I can just share a story, we really encouraged the community to just drop by, and if they needed a tomato, take a tomato kind of thing, and they learned that. But my favorite story was that I came into the church one day, and there were these two kids, maybe 9 and 12, sitting on the church lawn, and we'd planted some jalapenos. And so they were taking turns licking this jalapeno and seeing who could stand the most. And it was, I don't know, it was great fun, great conversation started. We got to talk about why the garden's there, and it was funny. They thought they'd gotten caught, and I said, no, take as many as you want. That's what it's there for. And it was a great opportunity to engage with the community. And there was a bunch of those, but that was my favorite.
And it was beautiful, to the respect and the appreciation that was expressed by the community for our gardens.
That's a beautiful story. I really appreciate that. We just had one last question come in that I think we have some time for, and it goes to both of you. And that's for those who've just assembled an environmental team or green team or a committee. Could you give a couple of suggestions for first things that they could do to engage their congregation or their community, just to get started?
I'll let you go ahead there, Elizabeth.
Okay. Well, I think it's important, as I mentioned, to start slowly, to meet as a team and think about the ideas that would match your congregation. We were lucky that we did have one little example given to us, and that was the beginning. But we brainstormed all kinds of things about our church building, and we started as a team to model things that we wanted to see done. We didn't go around telling people that this is what you must do, but we modeled that, we don't want to use plastic cups anymore. We had used them minimally, but we had used some. We don't want to see water bottles in the basement. The approach was very low key, and yet we just kept modeling things that were the standards that we wanted to establish. People were, and it was thrilling because we don't have a really young congregation, but they were fairly early adopters, and there was very little resistance. It just sort of flowed. So I mean, if churches are using styrofoam cups or things like that are really easy to, begin to get rid of, that's probably an easy way to start. But it depends upon the thinking of your congregation. Yeah.
Could I add a little bit from the leadership perspective? It was really interesting to see the environmental team trundle along in almost the background for a couple of years. Change doesn't happen quickly in rural Ontario. And so they just sort of were there. And I think had we come up right away and said, we're going to do something environmental, it's interesting. Environmentalism is not really a positive word around here, but conservation is. And it's really just getting people, sometimes using different words, sometimes just building relationships. And I think the success of this whole thing has been that they just started quietly and were allowed to develop as they felt need. I think the other side of it is there's many different angles that they could have gone, but they made sure to use the talents that God had given different congregants. And I think I remember when we started talking about the garden and we realized, we were trying a bunch of different projects, and it's always been important to me to have a project at the church, but we realized we had half the horticulture society in the congregation. And it just was a natural fit. And at first there was a little bit of static, but eventually, you know, we had everybody out after church weeding. And it was very natural. And I think you've got to draw on those natural relationships and natural gifts.
Yes, very true. Yeah.
I might just add a complimentary kind of thing there too, is that we're all meeting at our churches because we have a shared faith. So having services that have environmental themes is a good way of just broaching the subject in something that's both accessible and very positive. And it's something I think people can, when they think about creation care rather than environmentalism, because I agree the world environmentalism isn't always a positive one. It really does help a lot too, just for people to maybe not even engage, but at least accept that it's going on.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you to everyone who came today. Thank you to our presenters for the work that they put in and for great presentations. And as we said earlier, this will become available on the website in a little while. But in the meantime, I wish everyone happy spring.
Thank you. Same to you.
Yeah, happy spring. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.